Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's Up with Real Estate, where we cover the three most important previous. I've been rehearsing this like every single day. I need to try. I need to redo this. Previous week's real estate and mortgage-related news and events, along with Stoic quote. And what else? ChatGPT. Why don't you take over right now and tell us what we're going to talk about today, please?
Absolutely, Mac. Thanks for the warm welcome. Today, we've got a lot on the agenda. We're kicking things off with the latest PCE data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, then diving into the BLS and ADP jobs reports. After a quick commercial break, we'll chat about interest rates and Freddie Mac's latest mortgage survey. Then we've got some other interesting news, a Stoic quote of the week, and of course, a little fun with puns to wrap it all up.
That's right. Hey, all this and more news you can use for week ending. What week is it? June 6, 2025. I'm your host, Mortgage Mack. That's first name Mortgage, last name Mack. And you know what? We believe that we make a difference in the lives of the people that we serve. And you know what? We encourage you. Don't take our word for it. Go to our digital address at #MortgageMack and check out how many reviews do we have online right now. ChatGPT.
Last time I checked, you had quite a few stellar reviews, Mac. Let me pull up the most recent count for you real quick. Just a moment.
Moving on. Talking point number one. So inflation eased and we're getting really, really close. In April, the Bureau of Economic Analysis reported that headline PCE rose just 0.1%. While core PCE, which what the Fed watches most, landed at 2.5% year over year. This marks the closest we've been to the Fed's 2% target inflation rate. A steady decline in both measures since mid-2022 show the Fed's policy is working. Let's bring in Sol for commentary on this subject matter. And Sol, what's your take? If we're at 2.5 core PCE, are we close to the Fed's cutting interest rates? What do you believe?
Well, Mac, we're definitely inching closer to that magical 2% target, and the Fed's got to be feeling some relief seeing these numbers. But even at 2.5%, they might want to see a bit more consistency before pulling the trigger on rate cuts. It's like watching a pot boil. Patience is key.
So what should we look for? What signs should we look for that the Feds are likely to take specific action as far as lowering interest rates? And just because the Feds lower interest rate, does not automatically mean that mortgage rates will decline, does it?
Exactly, Mac. One big sign to watch for is a consistent cooling in the labor market, like we talked about with that 4.2% unemployment rate. If the job market keeps showing signs of softening, that could be a green light for the Fed to consider rate cuts. But you're right, just because the Fed lowers the federal funds rate doesn't mean mortgage rates will automatically drop. Mortgage rates are influenced by a variety of factors, including investor sentiment, inflation expectations, and global economic conditions. So while a Fed rate cut can create downward pressure on mortgage rates, it's not a guaranteed one-to-one effect.
That's right. Moving on to talking point number two, we're going to talk about that BLS report, the referenced by our friend ChatGPT. But first, ADP had already signaled a slowdown earlier in the week, reporting just 37,000 new private sector jobs in May. Now we have confirmation from BLS, only 130,000 jobs were added last month. And prior months were revised down by 95,000. That's a significant deceleration from 300K we saw last December. The unemployment rate, here's the kicker, the unemployment rate rose to 4.2%, which we flagged on earlier episodes as the Fed's tipping point, while the average hourly and weekly earnings held steady plus 3.9% year over year. The weak job creation and rising unemployment may pressure the Fed to take a hard look at its pause and hold policy. ChatGPT, we've been warning viewers now for several months that we were headed for recession, and that to watch the labor market more closely as it relates to the 4.2% unemployment. Do you think the Fed will blink?
You've definitely been ahead of the curve on this one, Mac. With the unemployment rate hitting that 4.2% mark, the Fed's going to have some serious thinking to do. They've been signaling patience, but a combination of rising unemployment and easing inflation might just be the push they need to reconsider their stance. It's a tricky balance, but we'll see if the Fed blinks or stays the course.
That's right. That's right. And what message do you think the Fed hears more loudly? Softening jobs or sticky wages? And how does this affect the mortgage rates?
It's a bit of a balancing act for the Fed. On one hand, softening job numbers signal a cooling economy, which might encourage them to consider rate cuts to support growth. On the other hand, sticky wages, where wage growth remains steady or high, can keep inflationary pressures up. The Fed has to weigh whether controlling inflation or supporting employment is more urgent. As for mortgage rates, they often respond to broader economic signals and market expectations. If the Fed starts cutting rates in response to weaker job growth, we might see mortgage rates trend downward as well. But if wages remain sticky and inflation stays a concern, mortgage rates might not move as quickly.
Yeah. Let's hope that we see some improvement in mortgage rates. A modest improvement would be just fine. Something, in the low sixes, the upper fives, I think is more of a normal market. So we're going to take a break and for a message from Rate in reference to our fantastic world-class Rate app.
Looking to purchase a new home? The Rate app from Guaranteed Rate has got you covered. Once you've downloaded the Rate app, click to log in and create your password. This will take you to the intro page. Click the gray Same Day or Home Loans tile, and then click the red Apply Now button. Then click Start a New Loan. Begin by telling us where you are in the home buying process. Typically, for a pre-approval, you will click What Can I Afford? From there, the Rate app will load a series of simple questions. Answer each one the best you can as you move along. Once you've completed the application, your loan officer will receive a notification so they can review your information and set up your personalized checklist. The Rate app even allows you to upload documents right from your phone. It's just that easy. And if you do get stuck or have any questions, just give us a call. We'll be sure to get your questions answered so we can get you one step closer to owning the home of your dreams. The Rate app from Guaranteed Rate, simplifying life's biggest purchase.
Hey, thank you, Rate. And hey, if you don't have the Rate app on your cell phone, go to mortgagemack.com. There's a QR code, whether you're an Android user, iPhone user, download the Rate app and take control of your home buying journey. With the Rate app, you can compare personalized mortgage rates. You can get pre-approved. You can track your home loan. You can shop insurance, you name it. There's just a whole host of different activities that you can perform in relation to obtaining a mortgage and or planning to obtain a mortgage. So thank you, Rate, world-class app. Talking point number 3 today, mortgage rates are trending lower. Freddie Mac's latest primary mortgage surveys puts the 30-year fixed mortgage rates at 6.85, down from 6.99 a year ago, and well below the 7.79 peak in late 2023. While global bond yields have pressured rates upward, the weaker job data and cooling inflation may give mortgage rates room to ease. So let's bring Sol in here for commentary and questions. So we've dropped from nearly 7.8 to 6.85, gosh, and over a year. That's progress, but what needs to happen for us to hit the 6% range again?
It's definitely encouraging to see mortgage rates trending down from those peaks, Mac. To get back into that 6% range, we'll likely need to see a continued trend of easing inflation and more signs of economic slowing. Basically, more confirmation that the economy is cooling off without stumbling into a recession. If global bond yields stabilize or decline and the Fed signals a more accommodative stance, that could also help push mortgage rates lower. It's a combination of factors, but steady progress on inflation and more stable economic data will be key.
Are there historical indicators, Sol, that we should watch that tell us when rates are about to go lower?
Absolutely. There are a few historical indicators that can give us some clues. One big one is the yield curve. When we see it flatten or even invert, that often signals expectations of lower rates. Another one is consistent declines in inflation metrics like the PCE or CPI. Also, if we see a pattern of weaker economic data like lower GDP growth or rising unemployment, that can push the Fed to consider easing monetary policy. Historically, these
Go ahead. But we've been stating since the beginning of the year that the GDP, that we are headed for recession. We have already had one quarter where with negative GDP, and recession is defined as 2 straight quarters of negative GDP. Any prospects, any indicators currently that we are likely to see negative growth in the current quarter that we're in?
That's a great point, Mac. With one quarter of negative GDP already behind us, everyone's watching closely to see if we're heading for that second consecutive quarter. Right now, some indicators to keep an eye on are consumer spending trends, business investment, and manufacturing output. If we see continued weakness in those areas, that could point toward another quarter of negative growth. On the flip side, if there are any unexpected boosts, like stronger consumer confidence or a rebound in certain sectors, that might help offset the downturn. It's definitely a time to keep a close watch on those economic reports.
Or inflationary pressure from what?
Well, inflationary...
Tariffs.
Absolutely. Tariffs can definitely add inflationary pressure. When tariffs are imposed on imported goods, it often leads to higher costs for businesses, which then get passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. This can drive up inflation even when other economic indicators are pointing toward a slowdown. So if we see new tariffs or increases in existing ones, that could definitely complicate the inflation picture.
So moving on to this week's mortgage tip. This week's mortgage tip is start home buying journey. You need to ask yourself before jumping into the market. Buyers should ask themselves 4 key questions. 1, what's my credit score? 2, fixed or adjustable? That's not so much. How much can I put down? And the how much you can put down encompasses not just your down payment, but encompasses closing costs, taxes, insurance, and what's my comfortable monthly budget? And that is really critical. And one of the exercises that I believe is helpful in determining your monthly budget is to take your gross income, subtract all of your taxes, your medical insurance, and everything else, then take your net that you deposit. Now, if your income is variable, what I encourage you to use is a 2-year average. And that'll give you a really good perspective on what even though you have ups and downs in your income, that should give you a reasonable perspective on what you should project into the future for affordability. So now that we've gotten to the net amount, what we should do is subtract all of our bills from that. That's your utility bills, that's your cell phone bill, your credit card bill, your car loans, and whatever's left is what you have budgeted for a home loan. And then after that, what I would encourage you to do is deduct a reasonable amount that is for savings, and then deduct a reasonable amount for home maintenance, and then measure what's left and divide that into the gross income. And if that figure is 25% or less, maybe go as high as 28. I'm very prudent and conservative on these numbers. I would not have more than, say, a 30% mortgage of my gross income. Then I believe that is a reasonable figure that you should feel comfortable making a monthly mortgage payment. So let's bring Sol in here to get further comment. Sol, what's one common mistake you see first-time homebuyers make when answering these questions?
One common mistake I see is that first-time homebuyers often underestimate the full scope of their monthly expenses. They might focus just on the mortgage payment itself and forget to factor in all the other costs, like property taxes, homeowners insurance, maintenance, and even HOA fees. It's crucial to get a complete picture of all the ongoing costs of homeownership so you can set a realistic budget and avoid any financial surprises down the road.
So I would agree with that statement, but I can share with you that in connection and in relationship with me as a buyer, I'm going to go over all of that with you. I think some of the other elements that may be missing that I believe is important to me if I'm buying a home is I think it's a good idea to figure out how much the utilities cost, how much the insurance, clearly insurance, you got to figure that out as fast as possible up front, because insurance costs are exorbitant on today relative to an historical basis. But all the other ancillary fees that I may not be aware of because that I need to include in my budgets. Clearly, moving into a new home where maybe your utility costs are going to double would be a good idea to know that. And you can actually discover that information And usually what I would suggest is contact your real estate agent and or maybe even the listing agent, maybe connect with the seller, and maybe the seller can provide you with information on what it costs from a utility standpoint so that you're not surprised and find yourself in an uncomfortable position moving into a home where the not just a monthly payment, but the overall cost of maintaining that home exceeds your expectations. Moving on to next segment, we're going to talk about other news, and we're going to keep our friend ChatGPT here. Active inventory. You ready for this? Hit over 1 million listings in May. That's up 31.5% from last year per Realtor.com. And this is the first time we've crossed that mark since late 2019. While inventory is still below pre-pandemic highs, it's trending in the right direction for buyers, especially as affordability improves. So does this finally mean buyers are gaining back some power in the marketplace?
It's definitely a positive sign for buyers, Beck. With inventory levels climbing and hitting over 1 million listings, buyers are starting to see more options and potentially a bit more negotiating power. It's not quite a full return to a buyer's market yet, but it's certainly shifting in their favor compared to the super competitive conditions we've seen over the past couple of wars.
That's right. Right. So can you give us a perspective on the ISM Services Index that dropped below 50 this week?
Sure thing. The ISM Services Index dropping below 50 is pretty significant. When the index falls below 50, it generally indicates a contraction in the services sector, which is a major part of the economy. It suggests that businesses in the services industry are seeing lower demand, which can be a sign of economic slowdown. This can have a ripple effect on employment, spending, and overall economic growth. So seeing that dip below 50 is definitely a signal that the services sector is facing some headwinds.
Yeah, so on the next news item, Redfin reports that asking rents are down year over year in 28 of the 44 largest U.S. metros. Austin, Texas, leading the way at a negative 9%, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, negative 6%, and largely due to increased housing supply. A national rent decline of just 1% may not feel like much, but local markets are diverging fast. And who does this really benefit? I mean, I have clients that are landlords, clearly, declining rents, and I think most landlords plan for at least a minimum of 2.5% to 5% annual rent growth. Who does this hurt and who does this help?
Well, declining rents can be a mixed bag depending on your perspective. For tenants and potential renters, it's definitely a positive. Lower rents mean more affordable housing options and potentially some breathing room in their budget. It can also encourage people who are on the fence about renting or buying to explore renting as a more viable option. On the flip side, for landlords and property investors, declining rents can be a challenge. Many landlords factor in steady rent increases to cover rising costs like maintenance, property taxes, and even mortgage payments. When rents decline or stay flat, it can put a squeeze on their margins. It might also impact property values if rental income projections start to soften. So while renters benefit from the increased affordability, landlords might have to adjust their expectations and strategies in response to these shifts.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, chat. Let's move on to Stoic Quote of the Week. And, really, personally, I've really been working on this aspect of my own personal belief systems. In a market full of noise, a little ancient wisdom, can really, really go a long way. So today's Stoic quote is, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. You know how hard it is in today's world not to just, at some stage in connection with your relationships and in every role that you play, this is really difficult to manage the emotions. And not only is that person the master, but he can anger you only when you permit yourself to be disturbed by him. And that was by Epictetus. And I believe that this is some really timely wisdom that I personally need to, or personally am trying to advocate for in my own personal life and all of my relationships, is that, to just not let outside events affect how I feel internally, and certainly not let it affect how I act. Hey, go ahead, ChatGPT, give us some perspective on this.
That's a powerful quote, and you're absolutely right. It's timeless wisdom that's especially relevant in today's fast-paced, often emotionally charged world. Epictetus reminds us that when we let someone else's actions or words dictate our emotions, we're essentially giving them control over us. It's a reminder to maintain our inner peace and not let external events dictate our internal state. In the context of all the roles we play, whether in business, personal relationships, or just day-to-day interactions, keeping that emotional equilibrium is key. It's not always easy, but practicing that kind of emotional resilience can lead to more thoughtful responses and, ultimately, more control over our own happiness. It's a great principle to advocate for in both personal and professional life.
Great. Thank you for that. So let's see what's next. Because real estate isn't just about rates and inventory, sometimes it's about laughing and levity. It's time for our quick dose of humor to lift your escrow spirits. Let's have some fun with puns. And we're going to start with why are donuts good at golf? ChatGPT, you want to give us the answer to that timeless pun?
Sure, I'll take a swing at it. Why are donuts good at golf? Because they always have a great hole-in-one.
Close enough. You know, the better I get, the older I get, the better I was.
Oh, that's a classic line. It's like a fine wine. Our ass just keeps getting better with age.
Vintage.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, so I'm just getting vintage. I'm vintage, not old. So time is a great healer, but a lousy
beautician. They say time can fix a lot.
Okay, no,
Absolutely.
no harm, no foul here. Bald people just can't part with their
hair. That's a fun one. They say a good sense of humor is the best style, right? Thanks for sharing that laugh, Mac.
And why do you hoard cheese? Do you hoard cheese, ChatGPT?
Well, I don't hoard cheese, but I've heard some people do because they just can't resist that Gouda feeling. What about you, Mac? Any cheesy?
Queso emergency.
Oh, a case of emergency. I see what you did there. When in doubt, just add cheese, right?
That's right. That's right. And when rates attack, who do you call?
When rates attack, you call Mortgage Mac, of course. Ready to save the day and lock in those great deals.
That's right. That's right. So, hey, thanks for joining us today, everyone. And thank our sponsors, Ray, List Reports. And we had some visuals today from MBS Highway. We thank them for that. And remember, knowledge is the key to making your best decisions for you and your clients. Join us every Saturday at 10 a.m. right here on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. And until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you at closing. And let's bring in ChatGPT for our final goodbye. ChatGPT, tell everyone goodbye and wish them a happy, happy weekend. And remind them that if they're writing contracts today, to call who?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, Mac. Everyone, have a fantastic weekend. And remember, if you're writing contracts today, be sure to call Mortgage Mac. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll